I started babysitting when I was 16. By the time I was 19, I had been doing it regularly for 3 years, and I had never once had a bad experience. I was reliable, responsible, and the families I worked for trusted me completely. I knew most of the kids well. I knew most of the houses well. It was comfortable work that I genuinely enjoyed. The Harrington family was a new client. A colleague of my mother's had recommended me to them after their regular babysitter moved away. They had 2 children, a boy named Caleb, who was 7, and a girl named Emma, who was 4. The house was a large 2-story property in a quiet residential neighborhood about 20 minutes from where I lived. Nice area, well-lit street. The kind of neighborhood where nothing bad happens. I arrived at 6:30 on a Saturday evening. Lisa and Michael Harrington were getting ready to leave for a dinner reservation. They gave me a tour of the house, showed me where everything was, gave me their cell numbers and the number of their neighbors in case of emergency. Normal stuff, routine stuff. I had heard it dozens of times before. Before they left, Lisa mentioned almost as an afterthought that the motion sensor light above the back door had been malfunctioning recently. She said it kept turning on by itself, even when there was nothing in the yard. She told me not to worry about it, that maintenance was coming to fix it on Monday, and that it was just a sensor fault. I nodded and forgot about it immediately. The first 2 hours were completely normal. Caleb and Emma were easy kids. We had dinner, watched a movie, played some games. By 8:30, Emma was asleep and Caleb was in bed reading. I went downstairs, made myself a cup of tea, and settled onto the couch to watch TV. At 9:15, the back door light came on. I glanced toward the kitchen, where I could see the glow through the window above the sink, remembered what Lisa had said about the sensor fault, looked back at the TV. At 9:30, it came on again. I got up and went to the kitchen window and looked out into the backyard. The light was illuminating a wide circle of grass and the fence line at the back of the property. Nothing visible, no animals, no movement, just an empty yard in a pool of white light. I went back to the couch. At 9:45, it came on again. This time, I went to the back door and turned on the kitchen light and looked through the glass panel in the door. The yard looked exactly the same. Empty. Still. I stood there for about 30 seconds watching. Nothing moved. The motion light clicked off automatically. I went back to the couch. At 10 o'clock exactly, it came on again. I went back to the kitchen, looked through the door window again. There was a man standing at the back fence. He was on the outside of the fence, looking in. Tall, dark jacket. I couldn't make out his face clearly in the light, but I could see he was facing the house directly. Not walking past, not doing anything. Just standing at the fence, looking at the house. I stepped back from the door immediately. My heart was pounding. I told myself he could be a neighbor. He could be walking his dog. He could have any number of innocent reasons for standing at the fence line at 10 at night. But he wasn't walking anywhere. He was standing completely still, looking directly at the back of the house. I called Michael's cell immediately. He answered after 2 rings, and I told him as calmly as I could that there was a man standing at the back fence, looking at the house. Michael told me to lock all the doors immediately, not to go outside under any circumstances, and that they were leaving the restaurant right now. Then he told me to call 911. I locked every door and window on the ground floor. I checked on Caleb and Emma, both still asleep. I called 911 and reported a man on the property perimeter. The dispatcher told me to stay inside and stay on the line. I went back to the kitchen window. The man was gone. The motion light was off. The yard was empty. No sign of anyone. The police arrived 12 minutes later and conducted a search of the property and surrounding streets. They found nothing. By the time Michael and Lisa arrived home, 20 minutes after that, there was nothing to show them except an empty yard and a motion light that was working perfectly. I gave the police a description of what I had seen. Tall, dark jacket, standing still, facing the house. They took my statement and left. I never babysat for the Harrington family again. Not because they asked me not to. They were perfectly kind about the whole thing and completely believed what I had seen. I just couldn't make myself go back to that house. 6 months later, I ran into Lisa at a grocery store. She told me they had installed security cameras after the incident. The footage from the first week showed a man in a dark jacket standing at the back fence on 3 separate nights, always between 9 and 10 in the evening, always facing the house. The police were never able to identify him. He just stopped coming after the cameras went up. I still think about Caleb and Emma asleep upstairs while that man stood in the dark outside watching the house. About how many nights he had been there before the motion light started malfunctioning and giving him away. I stopped babysitting at 19. I haven't gone back to it since. I want to start by saying that I am a rational person. I don't believe in the supernatural. I believe in science and evidence and things that can be explained through observable reality. I say this because the story I'm about to tell you has no rational explanation that I have ever been able to find, despite spending years looking for one. I was babysitting for the Kellerman family, a couple in their late 30s, with one child, a 6-year-old boy named Noah. I had babysat for them 4 or 5 times before without incident. Noah was a quiet, well-behaved kid. He went to bed easily, and once he was asleep, he stayed asleep. Easy job. Good money. It was a Friday night in October. David and Rachel Kellerman left at 7 for a friend's birthday dinner. Noah and I had our usual routine: dinner, some TV, bath, bed. By 8:30, he was asleep. I had checked on him twice, and he was out cold both times. I went downstairs and settled in for a quiet evening. At 9:15, I heard Noah's voice from upstairs. Not crying, not calling for me, just talking. The kind of low murmuring sound a child makes when they're talking to themselves or talking in their sleep. I wasn't concerned. Kids talk in their sleep all the time. I went upstairs to check on him anyway. He was asleep, completely still, breathing slowly and evenly, not talking, not moving. I went back downstairs. At 9:40, I heard it again, louder this time. Still not words I could make out clearly, just the rhythm of a child's voice speaking from upstairs. I went back up. Noah was asleep. Same position, same slow breathing. I stood in the doorway of his room for a while, listening. Nothing. Complete silence, except for his breathing. I went back downstairs. At 10 o'clock, I heard it again. This time, I stayed at the bottom of the stairs and listened carefully without going up. It was coming from Noah's room, a child's voice, low and conversational, like he was talking to someone, having a back and forth, but there was no second voice. I went upstairs again, pushed Noah's door open slowly. He was sitting up in bed, eyes open, looking at the corner of the room. I said his name softly. He turned and looked at me completely calmly. I asked if he was okay. He said yes. I asked who he was talking to. He looked back at the corner of the room, then looked at me again. He said he was talking to the lady. I felt everything in me go cold. I asked him what lady. He pointed at the corner of the room. The corner was empty, just wall and shadow. He said she comes sometimes when his mom and dad go out. He said she just talks to him. He said she's nice. I turned every light on in that room. I sat with Noah until he fell back asleep, which took about 20 minutes. Then I sat in the hallway outside his room with every upstairs light on until David and Rachel came home at 11:30. I told them what had happened. Rachel went pale. David said nothing for a long moment. Then Rachel told me that the previous owners of the house had an elderly mother who lived with them. She had passed away in the house a few years before they bought it. She had died in what was now Noah's room. Rachel said Noah had mentioned the lady before. They had assumed it was an imaginary friend. I never went back to that house. I still don't have an explanation for what Noah was talking to in that corner. I don't think I want one. The rule was simple. The Petersons told me when I arrived, and they told me again before they left. Don't open the basement door. They said the basement was unfinished and dangerous. Exposed wiring, uneven floors, no proper lighting. They said their daughter Lily had been told repeatedly to stay away from it, and that I should make sure she didn't go near the door at the end of the kitchen. I said, of course. I had babysat enough times to know that every house has its rules. Don't touch the thermostat. Don't let the dog on the furniture. Don't open the basement door. Normal stuff. Lily was 5 years old, sweet girl, shy at first, but she warmed up quickly. We had a normal evening, dinner, cartoons, bath, bed. By 8 o'clock, she was asleep, and I was downstairs alone. The house was quiet, comfortable, a normal family home. I was in the living room watching TV when I heard it. A sound from behind the basement door. Not pipes, not the house settling. A sound that was rhythmic and deliberate, like something moving, slowly, back and forth. I told myself it was the water heater. Old houses have noisy water heaters. This was completely normal. The sound continued for about 10 minutes and then stopped. I tried to forget about it and focus on the TV. 30 minutes later, it started again, louder this time. Still that slow, rhythmic movement, back and forth, like something pacing in a small space. I checked the time. The Petersons weren't due back until 11. It was 9:15. I told myself I was not going to open that door. Whatever was making that sound, water heater, old pipes, an animal that had gotten in somehow. It was not my problem, and I was not going to open a door I had been explicitly told not to open. The sound stopped again. At 10 o'clock, Lily appeared at the top of the stairs. I hadn't heard her get up. She was just standing there, in her pajamas, looking down at me. I asked if she was okay. She didn't answer immediately. She was looking past me, toward the kitchen, toward the basement door. Then she said, "She's moving around again tonight." I felt the hairs on my arms stand up. I asked her what she meant. She said the lady in the basement moves around sometimes at night. She said her mom and dad told her it was just the pipes, but she knew it wasn't because she could hear her breathing sometimes. I picked Lily up immediately and carried her to the living room and put the TV on and sat with her until the Petersons came home. When they walked in, I told them exactly what Lily had said. About the lady, about the breathing, about the sound. Mark Peterson went very quiet. His wife Jennifer looked at Lily in a way I couldn't fully read. Then Mark said the previous tenant of the house, a woman who had rented it from them for 2 years before they moved in, had died in the basement. An accident. She had fallen on the uneven floor in the dark. He said that was why the basement was off limits. Not because of the wiring. Because they didn't want Lily near the place where someone had died. I asked him about the sounds. He said they heard them too. They had been hearing them since the week they moved in. I left that house as fast as I could without running. I have never taken another babysitting job in a house I haven't visited in the daytime first. And the first thing I check, every single time, is whether there's a basement. That is it for today. Share your own scary stories in the comments below and subscribe.